welcome to the deep dive. You sent us quite a stack of sources articles from health groups, research summaries, even a TikTok, all asking that age-old question. Does sugar really make kids hyper?
Ah, yes. The classic sugar rush. It's something, so many parents feel like they see happen all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Birthday parties, Halloween, maybe just an after-school treat.
Yeah.
It's a picture we all kind of recognize. But what does the science actually say? Is that feeling, that perception really accurate?
Well, that's what we're here to do today. Dive into your sources, unpack the evidence. We'll look at what the studies show, try to understand why this idea is so common if the science maybe doesn't back it up, and importantly, talk about the very real health risks of sugar because, well, there are plenty.
And we'll also touch on other things in their diet that do seem to affect behavior.
Exactly. It's not just about sugar. So, yeah, this is your shortcut to getting the lowdown on the whole sugar hyperactivity thing. Let's get into what your sources told us.
Okay, so let's start with that core belief. You included that TikTok, which kind of makes fun of the idea, saying people who think sugar causes hyperactivity don't get sugar or hyperactivity. But you look at the comments.
Oh, yeah. The comments definitely show how strongly people feel about it. People really, truly believe they see a direct link. It's based on experience.
It's powerful, that anecdotal stuff.
Yeah.
You see a kid eat cake at a party, then they're running wild. It's easy to connect A to B. Makes sense intuitively.
It does. And here's the first big takeaway from your sources.
Yeah.
Based on lots of rigorous scientific studies, including these big reviews called meta-analyses, the overwhelming conclusion is that sugar itself, it does not directly cause hyperactivity in most kids.
Wow. Okay. So that's quite a statement against the common wisdom.
It is. Your sources really hammer this point home. They talk about studies using the gold standard method, blinded, placebo-controlled trials.
Can you quickly explain what that means? Blinded, placebo?
Sure. So blinded means the key people involved don't know who's getting what. In these studies, neither the kids nor their parents, nor even the researchers handing out the stuff, knew if a child got real sugar or a placebo, something that looked and tasted the same, maybe like an artificial sweetener, but wasn't sugar.
Ah, so it takes away the bias. People can't see what they expect to see.
Precisely. Expectations can't unconsciously influence the results. And when you pull the data from lots of these careful studies together, like in those meta-analyses, there's a really influential one from 1995 that multiple sources mentioned, plus a newer one from 2020. The result is pretty consistent.
And that result is?
Little to no significant effect of sugar on kids' behavior or their cognitive performance, just not seeing that direct link.
So it's not just one random study, it's combining the results of many good ones. That's pretty compelling evidence against the idea.
It is. And your sources also specifically mention kids diagnosed with ADHD. Even for that group where hyperactivity is obviously a core symptom, these big analyses didn't find evidence that sugar directly makes it worse.
Okay, this is really interesting. If the science is so clear, based on these strong studies, why on earth is this belief still so common? Why does everyone know sugar makes kids hyper?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And your sources dig into this. They offer a few really good explanations. One thing is some early studies, way back in the 70s and 80s, they weren't designed very well, scientifically speaking, like some research around the Feingold diet. They weren't properly controlled, but they suggested a link, and that idea kind of got out there and stuck.
Right, so the myths maybe had a bit of a head start from flawed science.
Seems like it. But probably the biggest reason highlighted in your sources is something called expectancy bias. Basically, what we expect to see influences what we do see.
Okay, how does that work with sugar?
Well, your sources explain it like this. If a parent expects their child to get hyper after eating sweets, they're much more likely to notice and interpret any energetic behavior as hyperactivity, even if it's just normal kid energy in an exciting situation.
So the parent's belief shapes their perception of the child's behavior.
Exactly. There was this fascinating study mentioned where parents were told their kids got a sugary drink, but actually, they all got a placebo, no sugar at all.
And what happened?
The parents who thought their kids had sugar rated them as significantly more hyperactive compared to the parents who knew it was a placebo.
Whoa. So it wasn't the sugar acting on the kid.
Nope.
It was the idea of sugar acting on the parent's observation. That completely flips the script.
It really does. And think about that classic party scenario again, the sugar rush. Your sources suggest that perceived burst of energy, it might have very little to do with the actual sugar.
It's more the context.
Yeah, the excitement of the party itself, being with friends, loud music, games. maybe even caffeine and things like chocolate or some sodas.
Right, the kid's already amped up by the whole situation.
Totally. And other theories, like allergic reactions to sugar causing hyperactivity or maybe blood sugar dips, hypoglycemia. The sources say the current data just doesn't really support those either. Actually, having high blood sugar, hyperglycemia, usually makes people feel tired or irritable, not hyper.
Okay, so the direct sugar causes hyperactivity link seems pretty much debunked by the evidence you looked at. But, and this is a huge but, that does not mean sugar is fine for kids. Not by a long shot.
Absolutely not. Your sources are incredibly clear and unified on this. Even if it doesn't cause that immediate bouncing off the walls effect, loading up on added sugar is seriously bad news for kids' health in the long run. The risks are well established.
What are we talking about here? What are the main dangers?
Well, the list is pretty sobering. There's obesity, obviously tooth decay, but also it increases the risk factors for serious things like heart disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. These are major health problems.
And I saw the American Academy of Pediatrics has some pretty strict limits they recommend based on your sources.
They do. For kids age 2 and older, the advice is less than 25 grams of added sugar per day. That's about 6 teaspoons, give or take.
6 teaspoons.
Oh.
That sounds like, well, not very much when you start looking at labels.
It's really not. And kids, on average, are getting way more than that.
No.
One source said something like 17% of kids' daily calories come from added sugar, which is huge. And apparently about half of that comes just from drinks.
Drinks, like soda and juice.
Yeah, sugary drinks are a massive source. Sodas, sports drinks, fruit punch, sweetened teas. The AAP basically says stick to water and milk, and they're even cautious about 100% fruit juice.
Even pure juice, why is that?
Because even though the sugar is natural, it's much more concentrated than in whole fruit, and you don't get the fiber. So they recommend limiting juice specific amounts depending on age, like no more than 4 ounces a day for toddlers, and absolutely no juice for babies under 1.
And it's sneaky, right?
No.
Added sugar isn't just in candy and cookies.
Oh, absolutely. It hides everywhere. Your sources mention things like ketchup, dried fruit like cranberries, salad dressings, baked beans, even some breads and yogurts. You really have to become a label detective.
And look for all those different names for sugar.
Right. Brown sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, honey, molasses, agave, fruit juice concentrate, anything ending in ooze like dextrose, fructose, sucrose. The list goes on. Check the ingredients.
Okay, so let's recap. Science says probably no direct link to hyperactivity, but definitely yes to significant long-term health problems. That's a crucial difference. But your sources also mentioned that while sugar itself might not be the hyperactivity trigger, the overall diet definitely plays a role in kids' behavior and focus.
Exactly. This is where it gets a bit more nuanced. It's less about this one ingredient causes this one behavior and more about how the whole dietary pattern affects brain function and overall well-being.
How so? What's the connection?
Well, think about it. Highly processed foods, which are often packed with added sugar, also tend to be low in essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals, healthy fats that the brain needs to function well. Your sources suggest that a diet lacking these nutrients could actually make behavioral issues worse.
Whereas a good diet might help.
Right. A balanced, nutritious diet might even offer a sort of protective effect against some behavioral problems.
Did the sources point to any specific dietary things beyond just sugar that do seem linked to behavior?
Yes, they did. Several things came up. One was the glycemic index, or GI, of foods.
Right, I've heard of that.
So high GI foods, think white bread, sugary cereals, sweets, cause blood sugar to spike really quickly and then crash down. Your sources suggest these big swings can lead to irritability, moodiness, or energy fluctuations in some kids.
Okay, so that's different from hyperactivity, but still a behavioral effect.
Exactly. Whereas low GI foods like whole grains, beans, vegetables release sugar more slowly and evenly. This helps keep blood sugar stable, which might support better concentration and mood. Some sources even recommended aiming for a low GI breakfast.
Interesting, so the speed of sugar release matters.
What else?
Omega-3 fatty acids. These are crucial for brain health. You find them in oily fish like salmon, also walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds. There's research mentioned in your sources suggesting that getting enough omega-3s might help stabilize mood and improve focus and behavior, especially perhaps in kids with ADHD.
Okay. Vitamins and minerals, too.
Yeah, a couple were highlighted. Vitamin D, some studies hint it might help with attention and reduce irritability in certain children, though more research is needed. And also iron and zinc. Low levels of these have been linked to behavioral issues.
Why iron and zinc?
They're important for neurotransmitters like dopamine, which affects motivation and focus. Your sources noted that lower levels are sometimes seen in kids with ADHD, but again, it's an area needing more study, not a simple cause and effect. Got it. So nutrient density seems key for brain function. What about food additives? That comes up a lot too.
It does. The general consensus is that most additives are safe for most people. However, your sources did mention specific ones where some studies have found a link to increased hyperactivity, but specifically in some vulnerable children.
Okay, which ones are those?
It's a list of certain artificial food colors. The sources often list them by their E numbers, like tartrazine E102, quinoline yellow E104, sunset yellow E110, carmazine E122, ponzo 4R E124, and allure red E129, plus the preservative sodium benzoate E211. Some also mention potential links for artificial sweeteners like aspartame E951 and flavor enhancers like MSG E621.
That vulnerable children part seems important, though. It's not everyone.
Absolutely, it's not a universal effect, but for parents who are particularly concerned, avoiding foods with these specific additives is a practical step, given they don't add nutritional value anyway. But the sources also warn, don't assume additive-free automatically means healthy. You still need to check the sugar, fat, and salt levels.
Okay, so putting this all together, if you're a parent listening, what are the main practical things you can take away from these sources to support your kids' behavior and their general health through diet?
Well, the big shift is moving away from just worrying about the sugar causing immediate hyperactivity and instead focusing on building a consistently healthy, balanced diet overall. That means regular meals, lots of variety.
Whole foods over processed stuff.
Exactly. Prioritize whole foods. And hydration is key to encourage water and milk, limit those sugary drinks we talked about. If they want something sweet, offer whole fruit first. It's got fiber and nutrients along with the natural sugar.
And try to include those good fats and minerals.
Yes, make sure their diet has sources of omega-3s like fish or seeds and iron and zinc, maybe from lean meats, beans, or fortified cereals. The main goal is still limiting added sugar and highly processed foods, not necessarily because of the old hyperactivity myth, but because of the proven risks for obesity, diabetes, heart health, all those things.
So become a label reader.
Definitely. Check for hidden sugars and maybe keep an eye out for those specific additives if that's a concern for your child.
And it's also crucial to remember food isn't the only thing affecting behavior.
Oh, absolutely. Critical point from the sources. Behavior is super complex. Maybe try using non-food rewards sometimes so treats don't become the only motivator. And always remember other huge factors. Is the child getting enough sleep? Are they stressed? Have there been changes at home or school? Underlying health conditions? All these things can have a massive impact. If you have serious concerns about your child's behavior, the best step is always to talk to a pediatrician or a health professional for a proper evaluation.
So wrapping this deep dive up, what's the big picture? It seems the journey through your sources shows that this really common idea that sugar directly makes most kids hyper is largely a myth. The strong scientific evidence just doesn't support it.
Right. That sugar rush feeling seems much more likely to be about our own expectations as observers or just a generally exciting, stimulating environment where kids often eat sweets.
But, and it's a vital but, that absolutely does not mean sugar is off the hook. Your sources make it crystal clear that too much added sugar is linked to really serious long-term health problems for kids. Obesity, tooth decay, type 2 diabetes risk, heart issues.
That's the real danger we need to focus on. And while sugar itself might not directly trigger hyperactivity, the overall quality of a child's diet does influence behavior and concentration. Things like stable blood sugar from low GI foods, getting enough omega-3s, key vitamins and minerals, and maybe avoiding certain specific additives for some sensitive kids.
It really highlights that health and behavior are complex, aren't they? It's rarely about just one single bad guy ingredient. It's the whole pattern.
Yeah.
The diet, sleep, stress levels, individual biology.
Exactly. You have to look at the whole picture, the whole child, the whole environment.
So here's something to maybe chew on after listening to this deep dive. If the story you knew about sugar and hyperactivity turned out to be more about perception and context than simple cause and effect, what other things in life might you be explaining with a simple single cause, when the reality could actually be a much richer, more complex mix of factors you haven't fully considered yet?